Hello and welcome to the channel of Swords of St. Michael. I'm so glad you could join us. We are continuing the series with our Dom Scupoli, Spiritual Combat. This is the channel where you will find a variety of information on spiritual warfare, demonology, the study of and examples of Christian spiritual warfare. So, this is an ongoing chapter by chapter for Dom Scupoli's The Spiritual Combat. And if you'd like to start at the beginning, there is a lot more information. Today's chapter, we are going to focus on senses. So we're going to learn about what are the senses and how are they going to help us in the spiritual combat, the spiritual exorcism, where we clean out our closets. Our websites for more information, more prayers are www.swordsofstmichael.org, or if you need spiritual weapons to pray with, I have lots of rosaries and other beautiful designs at prayersbythebead.com. Onward and upward, we're going to pray ourselves in and get into finding out how the senses can be to our benefit. In nomine Patri et Filii et Spiritus Sanctus, sic ora et principio et nunc et semper et saecula saeculorum. Amen. Sancta Michael Arcangele, defende nos in prelio contra nequitiam et insidiis diaboli. Esto praesidium. Imper illi Deus supplices te precamer tuque, princeps militia celestis satana maliosque, spiritus malignos, qui ad perditionem animarum pervegantur, in mundo divina in virtute, in infernum detrude. Amen. Our research study prayer. Concede mihi misericors Deus, qui ti placita sut ardenter investigare, veraciter agnoscere, et perfecte ad implere, ad laudum et gloriam nominis tui. Amen. In English. Grant me grace, O merciful God, to desire ardently all that is pleasing to Thee, to examine it prudently, to acknowledge it prudently, to accomplish it perfectly, for the praise and glory of Thy name. Amen. Thomas Aquinas. Chapter 21. The Spiritual Combat, and a treatise on peace of soul by Dom Lorenzo Scupoli. The proper use of our senses, how they may help us to contemplate divine things. One must give great care and constant application to the correct regulation of his senses. The sensitive appetite, the source of all actions of our weakened nature, has an unquenchable thirst for pleasure. Since it cannot satisfy itself, it uses the senses to attract their proper objects, then transmits these images to the mind. Sensual pleasures, consequently, by reason of the union which subsist between body and soul, spread themselves through all the senses capable of pleasure, and then seize, like a contagious disease, upon the spiritual faculties. In this way, they effect the corruption of the entire man. You can use the following remedies against this enormous evil. Watch your senses carefully. Use them only for some good purpose, never for the sake of mere pleasure. If they do go astray, perhaps unnoticed, if they transgress the bounds which reason prescribes, check them immediately. They must be so regulated that instead of embracing objects for the sake of false pleasure, they become accustomed to draw from the same objects great helps for the sanctification and perfection of the soul. The soul, then, through recollection, is able to rise from the knowledge of earthly things to the contemplation of divine goodness. This can be done in the following way. When an agreeable object is presented to the senses, do not become absorbed in its material elements, but let the understanding judge it. If there is anything in it that does please the senses, remember that this is not the thing itself, but from God, whose invisible hand created and endowed it with all its goodness and beauty. Rejoice in the thought that this sovereign and independent being is the sole author of all the charming qualities that his creatures possess. He himself possesses them all in a manner infinitely superior to the most excellent created beings. In contemplating a beautiful work of creation, consider that, in itself, it is nothing. Let your thought soar to the great hand that produced it. Place all your delight in him, saying, "O my God, sole object of my desires, universal source of all good things, how delightful it is to consider that the perfections of creatures are but a faint image of thy glory." When you behold verdant trees or plants, the beauty of flowers, remember that they possess life only through the will of that divine wisdom that, unseen by all, gives life to all things. Say to him, "O living God, O sovereign life, thou delight of my soul, from thee, in thee, and through thee, all things on earth live and flourish." The sight of animals should lift your mind and heart to the author of sensibility and motion. Say with respect and love, "Great God, unmoved mover of all things, how I rejoice when I consider the eternity of thy existence, incapable of the slightest change." When the beauty of mankind impresses you, you should immediately distinguish what is apparent to the eye from what is seen only by the mind. You must remember that all corporeal beauty flows from an invisible principle, the uncreated beauty of God. You must discern in this an almost imperceptible drop issuing from an endless source, an immense ocean from which numberless perfections continually flow. How my soul is ravished when I consider the eternal beauty, the source of every beautiful thing. You must also distinguish, when you meet a person who is intelligent, just, affable, or gifted in any other way, just how much is his own and how much he has received from heaven. Then you will exclaim, "O God of all virtue, I cannot express my joy at what I consider all good that comes from thee, and all the perfections of created beings are nothing when compared with thee. I thank thee for this and all good things bestowed on my neighbor and on myself. Have pity on my poverty and be mindful of the great need I have of such virtues." When you have performed a good act, recall that God is the author of the act, and you are but his instrument. Lift up your eyes to him and cry out, "O sovereign Lord of the universe, it is with the greatest pleasure that I recognize that without thee, the first and principal cause of all things, I can do nothing." When you taste anything pleasant, consider that God alone is capable of giving it that taste which is so agreeable to you. Find all your delight in him and say, "Rejoice, O my soul. Without God there is no true or substantial happiness." Do not be satisfied with the pleasure that comes from a pleasant scent. Mount in spirit to heaven and rejoice in God from whom it came. Beg of him that, being the author of all sweetness, he will move your soul, freed from all sensual pleasure, to rise itself to him as a fragrant perfume. When you hear beautiful music, turn to God and exclaim, "O God, thy divine perfections fill my heart with delight." Their melodious harmony is infinitely pleasing, not only to thyself, but to angels, men, and created beings. In this chapter, we're really seeing how our senses, we are led by them. We are led by the eye. We're led by the ear. We're led by what we touch, what we feel, what we sense is in everything. And we have so many senses. We have 5 physical known senses. And as we are aware, the devil is able to get into any of these details at any time. Is it mink coats that you love? Do you love the feel of mink? Do you love the look of mink? Maybe you like raccoon better. Maybe you like coyote. Your senses will automatically gravitate to those things that you love and that give you pleasure. What we have to look at in this chapter, though, bottom line, we have an unquenchable, absolute unquenchable thirst for pleasure. And that's in everything. So, if we're looking at our senses and we're looking at creating an environment that we can mortify and regulate our passions to the divine majesty of God and exorcise those demons that keep sucking us back into those pleasures that we love, what are we looking at? If we know right off the top of our head that all these passions are all unquenchable, we're looking at every single object that we touch, we taste, we smell, and we see. We're looking at every single one of those. And we're thinking, this too can be used by Satan to tempt me to sin, to stray from God at any time. Whether it is a cognac, whether it is a cohiba, whether it is a gorgeous fur, a trip to San Juan, a trip to any port, Greece, Spain, Morocco, where your passions are, where your sensuality lies, where your senses are drawn, are wide open doors for the devil to give you, in a weak moment, the invitation to indulge in that pleasure that will never be completely quenched. That's the bottom line that this chapter is delivering home. So, what are we looking at? What we're looking at this week is to identify those things that we see in our common everyday life and in our work, in our opportunity to take a vacation, in our opportunity to come home on the weekends and relax and think, oh, what kind of pleasure would I like to indulge in? I made keto ice cream. Now, it seems like a ridiculous pleasure, but it is a pleasure. Food, sadly, in our society, is one of the most indulgent pleasures that we have. We may not have the money to drive a Bugatti or a Porsche or a Ferrari or even a Cadillac. We may have to drive a beater, a bruised beater back and forth to work. So what is our pleasure? Might be food. We might enjoy anything from as simple as an exquisite pastry to maybe a chocolate dessert. And that pleasure is never satisfied. That passion that we have for that sense It's never satisfied. We never get enough. And sadly, we build upon and build upon and build upon until it becomes a temptation. And the same is true with anything that we taste, we see, we smell, we feel, because these senses just, they grip us. So this chapter is telling us that when we find anything, whether it is the sense that we eat, we smell, whether it's a fine painting, when we find something incredibly beautiful and incredibly amazing, so that we're just drawn to it, and we find ourselves thinking, wow, and we're finding so much beauty. We're gathering so much pleasure from the sight, the touch, the fear, or the feeling, the smell, the taste. When we find ourselves like that, we have to focus on everything that God gave it. Man did not create the cocoa bean, which the extract is the cacao that gives chocolate its fabulous flavor. God did not create the minerals that are crushed with eggs that create this fabulous tempera that has been saved for years, that we can look at on gessoed boards by miraculous hands. God had a hand in every single aspect, every minutia, every minute detail that you can contemplate, that created this beautiful thing that you're drawn to. So let's think about that this week. God gave that thing of beauty, that thing of such wonderful taste. God gave it what it is. He gave all of it to the humans that created it. 2, when we're looking at that beautiful painting, or we're looking at beautiful music, or we're talking about the things we absolutely love and we see and we enjoy. And I have this Marian garden that I'm looking forward to taking you into and working on some prayers and stuff. I look at everything is a mathematical equation that God, in his infinite majesty, absolutely thought, this is it. This is my opus. This is my creation. Just as we hear a Tchaikovsky, a Rachmaninoff, some of us like Beethoven or Mozart, when we hear something that looks like notes on a page, the woodwinds, the brass, the layering of every single instrument, it creates a symphony. When I look at the garden and I look at even the wild plants, the wild hedgerows and the things that grow in it, the honeysuckle vines, I see God. He took this canvas, this dirt, and these little shoots, and he shot those shoots up into this gorgeous hedgerow. And he said, we'll put some honeysuckle here. We'll put some wild vines here. We'll put some wild Chinese wisteria. And in between these branches, we're going to put a little robin's nest. And over here, we're going to put a blue jay's nest. And then add to that, we're going to have some grass and ground cover and mosses and lichens. And you have symphony. You have the most beautiful symphony for the eyes that my eye couldn't contemplate, my eye couldn't create. And we can witness the majesty of God in any type of beautiful ocean landscape, pictorial, the sands, the dunes. There's such beauty. And I think that's why the scriptures, all creation sings God's glory. So we look at that and we contemplate that beauty in itself, it's nothing. It is absolutely nothing. It is part of God that created it. So, Level 1. As we think about the exercises that we do every week and think about how we can incorporate what we're learning into what we are attempting to do in ourselves, which is our spiritual growth and the spiritual warfare path, we look at making a list of all those things that we are drawn to. What do we passionately love to taste? What do we take pleasure from? Do we take pleasure from possibly attending the opera once a year and we travel? Do we love to work with our hands? Do we love to, is our passion plants? Do we work with bonsai and train plants? Do we find great pleasure in doing that? Or maybe we cook, and we cook for a lot of people. Maybe we take ingredients and we create amazing things that people just eat in a whole, 5 minutes after it's taken us 5 hours to think about and draw it out. What is it? What is it that we're taking such pleasure from? It could be anything. So I'd like you to try and find 10. If you're good with 5, that's fine too. So after you get your list, level 1 students, I want you to look at each one of these, and I want you to, as you go to bed, I want you to thank God. If your passion and you just love to eat what you create, I want you to think about how God created that symphony of all the ingredients that came together to create the beauty that is so sensually beautiful to your palate, to your eye. So I want you to think about how God took all these little things and put them together just for you to enjoy. Level 2, I'd like you to do the same thing. Find at least 10 things. Like, for me, one of mine is my garden. For me, another one is good red wine. So I'd like you to basically look at these 10 that you have. And I would like you to take time at night to pray. Because as you're contemplating the infinite in the things that you are taking such pleasure in, whether, maybe you're taking pleasure, you take great pleasure in your spouse that loves you so. God created every atom of that spouse. Maybe you're taking great pleasure in your job because you love what you do. And that's something, I can talk about dearly. I love making rosaries. I love finding these beautiful images, and I love putting them in Lightroom, and I love altering the shadings. I love changing the perspective a little bit and brightening them and softening them and then printing them. And then I take a very, very fine glitter to the edges just to zap it. And then I seal it in a marine grade epoxy. I get so much pleasure from doing that. And then I create Maria Goretti, just a variety of devotionals so that you have something beautiful to look at and look at this beautiful holy image that was created by people that loved God and loved their faith and loved to pray and needed that inspiration, as the chapter points out. God, I need virtue. I need these virtues to appreciate. And we need to give all that pleasure credit to the source. My hands, the rocks that I use, the wire that I use, I'm nothing. My creations, my rosaries, my Anglican prayer beads, chaplets, they're nothing without God. God was the author before I started doing this. This is the beauty of it. So my level 2 people, I would really like you to look at these top 10 things that you get great pleasure out of. And as you go to bed each night, this week till the next chapter, I'd like you to find, remember we were talking about our predominant passion, I would like you to find the pleasure that you just, that is the strongest, that you absolutely love the most. One of the strongest pleasures that you're so attached to, you love so much. Mine would have to be my morning cup of coffee with my Marian garden, with the birds singing, and Saint Bernadette, and the Pietà, my Deb sister gave me. I just look at that and I see all the dragonflies, and I have to tell you, I'm in heaven. You get such great pleasure, and you have to look and think, wow, this garden is nothing, absolutely nothing, without the hand that created it. God created it. So level 2, take that pleasure that you love, and I want you to find a way that you can pull back and fast from it. Whether it's a day, it's an hour, it's a couple days, and I want you to offer this up for someone that needs your prayer. So what I'm asking you to do, level 2, is I'm asking you to go a little bit deeper and find something that you take great pleasure in. It could be, a Cohiba cigar. It could be going out with the girls once a month. It could be something that you relish and you take such good pleasure in. And in order to keep it in right order and to keep the focus on God, the Creator, we're going to find a way to fast from that. And when you choose to fast, you're going to pray and offer up that opportunity to fast. You're going to offer that for a prayer for someone that needs it. Because we all have people we pray for. We all know people that pray. We all know that people are fighting so many hidden battles right now. And there's so much going on in the world around us that we all think, wow, this is really strange. This is really new. Nobody's ever seen this. Look throughout history. You can open a chapter of just about any time in history and find great hatred, find great horrors, anything. Racism, slavery, illnesses, pandemics, epidemics, horrible times. There was mighty famines. People have eaten their horses, their animals, their pets. People have killed people for so little provocation, and we think we're the only ones. Let us offer our prayers tonight so that we too may seek the virtue of appreciating the pleasures. Like little Teresa of the Little Way would say, oh Lord, I love this cake and I thank you for this cake. I'm going to offer up my enjoyment to you. So let's make it something that can't be used against us. And always remember, the battle's been won. If you need more help and information, please give us a like and a share, and please subscribe. And I thank you to my 2 new Patreon subscribers. Much appreciated. This is a ministry channel, and we mail out medals, prayers, all kinds of consultations all over the world. We're global. Thank you so much. God bless you. And like I said, never forget the battle's been won. Until next week. Sister Farah, signing off.